This week, Sony released their second trailer for Venom, a spin off movie of the Spider Man franchise. This is a movie that has had a very interesting production history. Technically, it's been in development since the third Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, which introduced Venom as a character. Since then, of course, Sony has rebooted the Spider-Man franchise, failed in rebooting the Spider-Man franchise, and given the rights to Spider-Man himself back to Marvel. What that means, though, is that Sony still has the rights to all of the other characters related to Spider-Man, so all of his villains, all of his love interests, and what this movie is meant to be, ostensibly, is the first in a Spider-Man spin-off cinematic universe. Yeah, Adam, what did you think of this trailer?
Yeah. I gotta be honest, it's looking rough. Like
Yeah.
I don't like judging movies by their trailers. Don't like judging a book by its cover. Yeah. The whole trite stuff. I mean, I really do believe in it. This is one of the cases where I care about the people involved. I think Tom Hardy is fantastic. I will watch anything he's in, and I love his sensibilities. And I love Ruben Fleischer. He directed one of my favorite movies, which was Zombieland. Now, he hasn't seemed to have done anything good since, and it doesn't look like this is going to change that trend, frankly.
Yeah, as a fan, and specifically as a fan of the Spider-Man comics, I always find it, hard to separate whatever my fan expectations are from the movie or the trailer that I'm looking at. So a lot of my issues, and I use issues in air quotes with this trailer, stem from like, oh, this isn't Eddie Brock, this character isn't Eddie Brock, this his character doesn't make sense when you take it out of the context of Spider-Man. And so there's all these like little nerd things that I get pissed over. And I'm like, those, like, plenty of good movies have been made by subverting and changing comic book mythology. So I'm less frustrated about that and more frustrated with the fact that this movie looks just terrible and really, really terrible too, in a way that you can feel Sony kind of covering their asses in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think for me, and I'll just give this disclaimer, I am not involved in those kind of comics. I didn't read the Spider-Man comics. I don't even care that much for the movies. They're good movies. A lot of them are good movies. Even the bad ones are still fun to watch, but I just don't have a connection. I look at this, I'm kind of baffled because everything they're trying to set up, from the dialogue to the character to the reporting to the evil corporate guy with the generic motivation to, we need to evolve the human race. Like,
this is the start of
and none of the ideas,
yeah.
none of the ideas are inherently bad. And I go as far to say as some of the visuals and the color they choose are really rich and very inviting in an aesthetic sense. The problem is that it seems like everything they tried to reach for, just they were baseless in their ability to construct dynamics. It just feels insanely flat, and that's really frustrating, honestly.
It is frustrating. I'll concede that the one part of the trailer I did kind of get a rise out of was the actual reveal of Venom himself.
Yeah, that was
I think
good.
he looks pretty cool. I don't know. I mean, like it's a hard character to get right on screen just because the way he's drawn in the comics has sort of, it meant to excite the reader's imagination. So watching different filmmakers try and envision what that would actually look like in reality is interesting. And I like this version. I think it looks kind of cool. But literally everything else in here just feels wrong. I don't like him spitting the Venom tentacles out of his back. I don't like his accent. Again, I think Tom Hardy's a good actor, but I feel like they should have just made him British or made him do whatever accent he regularly does. I feel like he's going back and forth a lot here, and it just feels uncomfortable. Jenny Slate feels like so weirdly miscast.
Exactly.
She pronounces symbiote like it's a breakfast cereal. I'm just like, gosh.
Even the dialogue, like, I'm a journalist, like, I find people, I discover the truth. Like, it's so, I mean, obviously we're not hearing in the context of the film and the narrative and the characters, but like, how does any of that ever fly anywhere? You know, that's like to me why I'm baffled. You know, I don't like getting angry at trailers. I love to give filmmakers and stories the benefit of the doubt. But when I see some of this stuff, I'm just like, how can this work? You know, and that's why it's deflating to watch something like this. Like I watched a couple times to prepare for this, and I started to find myself like getting depressed because it's like I can tell they were trying. Like it almost feels like the people believe that what they're doing is working, and it's just like watching paper thin presentation for me.
Like watching paint dry. Yeah. I mean, like, and I also have to think like Sony has a history of releasing trailers that really aren't good for sometimes for movies that are, you know, halfway decent. Like, you know, I mean, I don't think I'd call the Ghostbusters movie a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, but like compared to that trailer that they released, it was pretty good. Like, it wasn't nearly as bad as that trailer made it out to be, you know? So I look at something like this trailer and I'm like trying to tell myself, maybe it's good. Maybe they just like picked all the bad parts and maybe they just picked all the bad lines of dialogue. But yeah, you look at that conversation that he has with Michelle Williams at the beginning and it's like, that's not what real people say. That's not how real people talk. You know, there doesn't seem to be an ounce of humor in it too, which is something that I feel like is very key when it comes to making superhero movies nowadays. There's not a whole lot in the way of wit, whether that be through dialogue or through visuals. And I get that they're trying to swing the gritty horror movie angle. I think if you were going to do a standalone Venom movie, that's how you would do it. But like I said, everything that's coming out of people's mouths and everything that we're seeing up on screen screams, this is a generic, B-grade studio superhero movie.
And it's interesting. I actually really like Ruben Fleischer's aesthetic. I think like Gangster Squad was one of his bombs in a line of a couple failures. What I loved about that movie, it looked amazing. The visual direction and the colors that were used, the kind of feeling it evokes just by watching the images and the story is told through all the lights and color. I think that's one of his strengths. And the sad thing is when I look at like maybe Zombieland and what made it good, it's probably not him. It was the writers, because it's the same writers who did Deadpool. They're comedy geniuses. They're able to cultivate these characters and story as writers. And all the director has to do is not screw up, camera setups and editing. Like that's how good I feel like, personally, I feel like their writing is. I guess he's one of those guys where if you give him a good script, he can really soar. But I think the problem is he does pick a lot of these studio movies and that are probably designed by committee and have heavy influence from the executive. So he doesn't get a strong creative voice to amplify. He just gets a kind of weak, muddled, competent at best, hour and 45-minute movie, which he competently shoots, and then it gets released and it doesn't do well, and it adds to all these strikes against his resume.
I know. Yeah, and going off the screenwriter thing, I just looked it up. There's like 5 different screenwriters on this thing. Yeah. It seems to have gone through like several different iterations, probably because of the taking Spider-Man in and out of it so that it'll fit in or not fit in this case with Marvel. It's like I said, I can be optimistic and I say like, oh, this might be at least a fun movie. Like I might at least be exciting. But like when the big end of the trailer action moment is like Tom Hardy like reaching for a motorcycle that's in midair, it was just like, it just felt so lame. It was like, oh my gosh, that's what you're gonna sell this with? Like it feels so soulless.
It feels like it was designed by an algorithm. That's the other thing. At least this trailer, like I've never watched a trailer and so felt that it has been cultivated to fit an exact formula that is supposed to be mind blowing. And for me, it's like, in a world of such an excess of superhero movies, you have to bring something unique or fresh to the table.
You have to make yourself heard.
Yeah, and there's nothing that feels unique or fresh about this in any sense of the word. Like I said, the visuals are great. I love his style. I would love to see someone hand him a genuinely good script to direct. This reeks of a movie that's going to struggle, unfortunately.
So Venom comes out October 15th of this year. You can check out the trailer in the bio below. I hope you like it better than we did. And yeah, I hope the movie's actually kind of good, but we'll see.
I never want any filmmaker or film to fail. I just feel as be doing these kinds of discussions, we need to have like a certain kind of honesty. And I think one of the reasons we chose to discuss this wasn't to be negative, but because we love so many trailers and so many different movies. Between the two of us, it's very rare to find something that we both have a strong objection to. And so this feels like I'm glad we got to discuss it in this case.
Totally. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.